The National Desk, America's News, now.
Flood watches continue. A series of storms across the country with more on the way, where the threats are the worst.
The court is really sending a message that Israel, you are on notice.
The ruling is in, but the war continues. What the decision by the International Court of Justice means for the growing conflict in the Middle East. And could the United States be headed for a helium shortage? Why the medical community is worried about it. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David, and right now, more heavy rain is coming to the eastern U.S. with flood watches impacting 7 states today, from Alabama to Ohio, and flood warnings in at least 9 other states, from Texas to Michigan. Tomorrow, this storm is expected to move further east, leaving coastal states at high risk. Tornadoes are also possible in Alabama and Florida. More than 70 million Americans right now under fog alerts, many for the 3rd day in a row. The alerts stretch from the Canadian border to the Gulf Coast. It's not as dense as it was yesterday, when visibility was as low as 300 feet in some areas. And warm weather is breaking records. Washington, D.C. just tied its warmest January day on record, reaching 80 degrees today. Charleston, South Carolina reached a record today of 82 degrees. North Myrtle Beach, Florence, and Lumberton, those beat their warm daily low records this morning. And more record temps are possible in the southeast and northwest tonight, and on the west coast this weekend into next week. Developing now, a British oil tanker on fire in the Gulf of Aden, right near the Red Sea, after Yemen's Houthis say they hit it with a missile. The operator of the ship telling the BBC the strike caused a fire in a cargo tank, and firefighting equipment was being used to contain it. This just hours after rebels fired a missile at a U.S. warship. The destroyer USS Carney was able to shoot down that projectile, but the incidents escalating the worst Mideast sea conflict in decades. The Houthis continue to respond despite U.S. and U.K. military counteractions to deter the Houthis, which have threatened commercial vessels in the Red Sea dozens of times in opposition to Israel's war in Gaza. The United Nations top court today handed down a preliminary decision in a case brought by South Africa that accuses Israel of committing acts of genocide there. The International Court of Justice determined the allegations are plausible. But to be clear, this decision was not a ruling on whether Israel's actions constituted genocide. Today's decision now clears the way for more scrutiny, keeping Israel under the legal lens for years to come. Right now, the ICJ says Israel must, quote, take all measures to prevent genocide in Gaza, but it stopped short of ordering a halt to the country's military campaign in the enclave. In the case presented earlier this month, South Africa cited disproportionate civilian deaths and genocidal rhetoric. Israel had asked the court to toss the case out completely, laying out its efforts to protect civilian lives. But the court, of course, did not honor that request. And the ruling comes as we learn about the new death toll exceeding 26,000. 2/3 of those killed, reportedly women and children, according to health authorities in the Hamas-run enclave. As health officials on the ground report, Israeli forces have surrounded hospitals, and hundreds scramble to flee, fearing an imminent attack after evacuation orders from the IDF, which claims the hospitals are harboring Hamas militants. And tonight, a pause in funding for a UN agency on the ground in Gaza as the U.S. reviews allegations that 12 UNRWA employees were involved in Hamas attacks on Israel on October 7th. UNRWA has responded, saying it has fired several staff members with alleged involvement, while also opening a larger investigation into those individuals by holding them accountable, including with criminal prosecution. And the verdict is in. Former President Donald Trump ordered to pay $83.3 million in the defamation trial brought by author E. Jean Carroll. Trump must pay Carroll $18.3 million in compensatory damages and $65 million in punitive damages. This after just a few hours of jury deliberations. In a separate trial, a jury had already determined Trump sexually assaulted Carroll in the mid-90s and subsequently defamed her, something Trump has vehemently denied. Today's trial was simply to determine how much she would be awarded. And the Justice Department confirms former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo subjected at least 13 women to, quote, a sexually hostile work environment. The findings were briefly detailed today in a settlement agreement between the DOJ and the office of Cuomo's successor, Governor Kathy Hochul. That agreement also highlights reforms put in place by Hochul, and it includes recommendations from federal prosecutors, such as expanding the chamber's Human Resources Department and revamping how it investigates complaints. The former governor denies any wrongdoing. And the border wire standoff between Texas Governor Greg Abbott and the federal government continues as the border battle heats up on Capitol Hill. Kayla Gaskins has the latest.
Governor Greg Abbott standing firm in his fight to curb the record-breaking number of illegal migrants crossing into his state from Mexico.
We are going to make it impossible to enter Texas illegally.
Ordering the installation of more razor wire this week after the Supreme Court sided with the White House, ordering Texas to take it down. GOP governors from 25 states siding with Texas in this tug of war with the federal government, arguing Texas has a constitutional right to defend itself.
In accordance with
this comes as a bipartisan Senate deal to fund the border and Ukraine is on the verge of collapse. Republicans taking issue with tying the two priorities together, also arguing the bill doesn't do enough to secure the border.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, which is exactly what will happen, and we'll get nothing.
West Virginia Democrat Joe Manchin calling on President Biden to take responsibility for the mess as well.
And the president has to take blame for it, too, to allow it to get to this proportion. It's time for the president to declare a national emergency at the border and secure this border once and for all.
Manchin isn't alone. Democrats are increasingly slamming the president and the White House over the issue.
To the president's best interest politically to come up with a solution on border security.
New polling from Harvard-Harris shows immigration is currently voters' #1 concern.
I think the Democrats are seeing the same polls that we're seeing, that this is top of mind for voters. I mean, they've got, concerns.
Senator John Tester, a Democrat vying to hold on to his seat in conservative Montana, publishing an op-ed on the border crisis, writing, "My message to the president and my colleagues in Congress is simple. It's time to stop pointing fingers, quit using the border as a political talking point, and roll up our sleeves." Republican critics questioning Tester's commitment and passion for border security, arguing he's done little on the issue his past 18 years in the Senate. I'm Kayla Gaskins, reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
All right, Kayla, thank you. Alaska Airlines flying their Boeing 737 MAX 9 aircraft today with 3 scheduled flights, 3 weeks after the door blew out of an aircraft of the same model mid-flight. The FAA cleared the way for the planes to return to service after a rigorous inspection. Alaska's CEO acknowledged that passengers may have some anxiety about flying a MAX 9, but he expects they will soon regain confidence.
I don't think I would feel great, given the fact that the checking is open to human error.
I mean, I think they're probably checking aircraft more now than they were before because there's such a scope on them. So I feel more safe now than I did yesterday.
Ohio lawmakers are considering a bill that would combat AI-generated child pornography. Criminals can create explicit images of anyone using artificial intelligence, then use them as blackmail.
Generative AI will create a new image from scratch that will completely blend in an absolutely photorealistic fashion the original individual and a scene of any nature, to basically forge an image that is really hard to distinguish from reality.
The bill would make it a felony to create, distribute, buy, or possess AI-generated child porn. It would also fine tech companies if they knowingly allow AI-generated pornography to remain on their platforms. Top Democrats are looking to crack down on smoke-free nicotine pouches they claim target and harm kids. But the move could negatively impact their efforts to get much-needed Gen Z votes. National correspondent Janae Bowens explains the political backlash.
These brightly packed Zyn nicotine pouches are the newest players in the culture war.
Pouch packed with problems.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says the smoke and tobacco-free Zyn that comes in a variety of flavors are harming kids.
So today I'm delivering a warning to parents because these nicotine pouches seem to lock their sights on young kids, teenagers, and even lower, and then use the social media to hook them.
Now he's calling on the federal government to investigate.
First, the DC libs came for our guns. Now, they're coming for our Zyns. Enough is enough.
Conservatives using the top Democrats' crusade as a rallying cry for what Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene calls a Zynsurrection, adding the focus needs to be on deadly fentanyl instead.
I'm going to err on the side of more freedom and personal choices.
The backlash is bipartisan.
I think there's bigger issues to address than that product.
The company behind Zyn, Philip Morris International, is also firing back. They say it's only marketed to smokers and nicotine users 21 and older.
These products are really highly regulated. The product has been on the market for more than 10 years.
But a political concern for Democrats is that Schumer seems to be trying to take down a product loved by many Gen Zers, a key Democratic voting bloc.
I feel like there are more important things for this man to worry about than our nicotine usage. Like what?
Now, Amira, most concerning for Democrats, polls show younger voters are growing discontent with President Biden and lagging enthusiasm about his re-election bid. Now, this is a problem for Democrats who benefited from a record turnout of younger voters back in 2020. For now, the White House staying quiet on the Zyn controversy.
And Janae, talk to us a little bit more about the health impact in terms of how addicting they really are.
Right. So Zyn is very clear that the product contains nicotine, which is addictive. But if you look on their website, they reiterate the product is only for adult nicotine users 21 and up. And they say if you don't currently use nicotine, Zyn is not for you. Now, a company spokesperson added products like these can help smokers stop using cigarettes and vape pens that both have serious health risks. Now, they say folks trying to kick that bad habit need to be remembered in these product debates. Amira?
An interesting debate in a political year. Janae Bowens live in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much. And coming up, Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley is pushing back on pressure to end her campaign, why she says this race is not over yet. Then the popular surgery that more and more men are getting in the weeks leading up to the Super Bowl. Plus, a new study reveals a staggering number of rape-related pregnancies in Texas. How the governor is defending the state's abortion ban with no rape exception. We're back in 90 seconds. Republicans will still hold meaningful primaries, at least until the electorate selects their nominee at the ballot box. It comes as the Republican National Committee pulls a resolution that would have just declared former President Trump the presumptive GOP presidential nominee after just 2 contests. Still, Nikki Haley insists she has a path to victory, and it's too soon to end the final challenge to Trump's nomination. Atra El-Nashar has more.
The odds are stacked against her, but Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley is resisting calls to drop out after coming in 3rd in Iowa and 2nd in New Hampshire.
I wanted to be strong in Iowa. We did that. I wanted to be even stronger in New Hampshire. We did that. I want to be even stronger in South Carolina. We're going to do that. And then we're going to go on to Super Tuesday.
Reacting to news the RNC was considering a resolution to make former President Trump their presumptive nominee, which she believes came from Trump's team.
You can't bully your way through this process.
After news of the potential resolution got backlash, Trump posting on Truth Social, "I should do it the old-fashioned way and finish the process off at the ballot box." So what does lie ahead at the ballot box? A 538 average of polls in Haley's home state of South Carolina shows Trump with roughly 63% support and Haley with 25%. It's a winner-take-all state, so whoever comes out on top in South Carolina's February 24th primary will get all of its 50 delegates.
Delegates are one thing. 1,215 are needed to secure the GOP presidential nomination. But keeping a campaign funded long enough to be competitive is another. On Wednesday, Trump attempting to stymie Haley's funding, writing in this Truth Social post, "Anybody that makes a contribution to Bird Brain from this moment forth will be permanently barred from the MAGA camp."
Haley says she's got the money, raising $1.6 million since that Truth Social post. The vast majority, she says, came from small donors. 2 mega donors, Reid Hoffman and Andy Sabin, pulling back their financial support for Haley. Sabin said this the day after the New Hampshire primary.
You have to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. You got to know when to walk away. It's time for Nikki Haley to walk away.
Haley insists now is not the time. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
All right, Atra, thank you. And the White House is delaying the approval of nearly a dozen proposed gas export projects. Officials want the Energy Department to study the climate change impact of liquefied natural gas export terminals before they're approved. The move could help President Biden court young voters who call the fossil fuel facilities, quote, climate bombs. Industry groups call it a win for Russia. And the government is selling the federal helium reserve to a private company, sparking major concerns about shortages. Helium is critical for MRI machines, and up to 30% of helium in this country comes from the underground stockpile based in Texas. The sale may cause the facility to shut down temporarily, potentially impacting health care. The deal still needs to be finalized. American and Chinese officials will meet next week in Beijing about curbing the flow of fentanyl into the U.S. That's according to NBC, citing senior Chinese officials. The U.S. has not confirmed the meeting. U.S. officials say China is the main source of the precursor chemicals used by Mexican drug cartels to make fentanyl. Cooperation with China on the issue has been on hold. And Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, he will remain in a Russian prison throughout at least March. A Russian court extended Gershkovich's pretrial detention by another 2 months today. Gershkovich was arrested in Russia on espionage charges back in March of 2023. Russia has not provided evidence to support the charges. The U.S. government has declared him wrongfully detained. Tesla is recalling almost 200,000 vehicles in the United States. The recall is for 2023 Model Y, S, and X because of the backup camera. It might not function while the car is in reverse. Tesla says they are not aware of any accidents or injuries that may have come from this defect, but have a software update to fix the problem. This news comes a day after Tesla stock fell 12% following reports they missed their 2023 earning goals, and their 2024 volume growth may be lower than previously expected. NFL Championship weekend is about more than cheering on your favorite team. Medical reporter Liz Bonis shares why it's also a popular time in surgical recovery.
Hey there, hello to you. A popular procedure in men's health now expanding its timeline, you might say. Urologists have told us that while traditionally we see vasectomies rise in basketball season, these weeks leading up to the Super Bowl have become high-demand surgery recovery weekends.
I have quite a few coming up later today. So I mean, I think that around these sporting events, we're able to make a push for guys to come in and get the vasectomy done.
It's an outpatient procedure, which is a permanent form of birth control for guys. And Dr. Parush Babar of Ohio's Urology Group told me he's had an uptick in requests for the past few weekends this past month.
The vasectomy is a much easier and safer way of contraception than the alternative for women to get their tubes tied. So I think it's always prudent for partners to at least entertain that as maybe the first line if they're done having children.
The procedure itself cuts what's called the vas deferens, so sperm is reabsorbed by the body.
We do a lot of these on Fridays. By Monday or Tuesday, you're recovered.
And that's where some good football watching comes in between. It's suggested you stay off your feet as much as possible for the first 2 to 3 days to lessen the chance of swelling. Ideal for any sports fan to enjoy a little couch time.
And a lot of the urologists in our group will block out a day where we just do vasectomies just to help those guys along.
Your own doctor, obviously the person to refer you or answer your questions. I'm Liz Bonis reporting.
All right, Liz, thank you. And coming up, a South Carolina woman was shocked when she took a DNA test and discovered a new cousin. What she learned about her relative's past. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter to you, and we're taking the pulse of America. Charleston, South Carolina native Ann Hellman learned she had a relative she never knew about after taking a DNA test through MyHeritage.
In September, I had a note from MyHeritage that I had a new connection, new cousin. So I looked online, and the cousin's name was nothing I'd ever heard of.
Hellman discovered her second cousin was Shalom Korai, an 83-year-old Holocaust survivor who lives in Israel. Hellman was shocked, but after seeing pictures, she recognized the resemblance instantly. And since then, Hellman and Korai have been catching up on all the years that have been missed. Korai is planning a trip to Charleston this summer.
These are the findings published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. In the 14 states that have enacted abortion bans since the U.S. Supreme Court handed down the Dobbs decision, researchers estimated there were more than 519,000 completed rapes and 64,565 pregnancies associated with those rapes. 91% of the pregnancies occurred in states that have no rape exception, with 26,313, or 45% of them, happening in Texas. But back in September of 2021, when Governor Greg Abbott introduced the Heartbeat Act, he said this when a reporter pressed him on the lack of a rape exception.
Rape is a crime, and Texas will work tirelessly to make sure that we eliminate all rapists from the streets of Texas.
Last February, 85-year-old Gloria Surge was walking her dog Trooper by the lake behind her house in the Spanish Lakes Fairways community when an alligator attacked, killing her.
No child should have to bury their mom under such horrible circumstances.
Today, the family filed a wrongful death suit against the Wind Building Corporation, which owns and operates the Spanish Lakes community. Attorney Gary Lesser says Spanish Lakes should have removed that alligator. But just as important, she shouldn't have had to walk her dog by the lake in the first place.
Spanish Lakes is one of these communities that has a rule. You can't walk your dog in the streets of your community.
Well, up next, the estate of the late comedian George Carlin is suing a media company. What happened and what exactly they're asking for? In a sign of the times, the estate of late comic George Carlin suing a media company that created a fake hour-long comedy special using Carlin's likeness through artificial intelligence. The estate is asking podcast outlet Dudacy to take down the special where an AI-generated version of Carlin offers commentary on current events. The comedian, of course, died back in 2008. Now his relatives say the podcast hosts did not have permission to use his likeness. But the suit really gets to the heart of the next big frontier, how to address copyright infringement and ethics with artificial intelligence still largely unregulated and certainly the wild, wild west of technology. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. We do invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful weekend.